Hello and welcome to FDT-TV. As always, I'm here. I'm Ian. I'm here with Mike. We're here to talk about the Premier League and this week, the sack race. Which manager is going first? Stay tuned for that. But first, I think we need to take on what's happening in the Premier League. A little look back over the last 5 games. I know not all teams have played 5 games, but all 5 games and what's happening, who's becoming relegation contenders straight away, who's looking like they could push for a title, and who's going to sit in that mid-table obscurity. So, Mike, is there any teams in particular that have impressed you in the opening couple of games that maybe you thought, they're not going to be where they are now currently?
Luton,
what, dead bottom, flogging horse? Yeah.
No, I'm surprised they haven't conceded more. No, I'm only joking. Yeah, I mean, looking at the table, we have, who surprisingly, Brighton. They've kind of continued their good run of form. I know they've had a bit of a sketchy result against you, but obviously you're massive, so I don't know why we were questioning that. Yeah, Brighton doing very well. Villa obviously continuing their good form, generally speaking.
Yep.
Man City, I think, probably about where they would expect to be currently. I know they've got the Manchester derby, I think, coming up soon. Mm-hmm. Spurs as well. Something we're going to come on to a little bit later. I've got to say, they're looking good without Harry Kane.
I said, didn't I? And Postecoglou will change them. He will get them playing well. He might not win anything first season, but yeah, look a bit more dynamic.
I'm hoping the railings, or they'll come off the rails a little bit after this weekend when we play them at home. But I've got to say, I'm a little bit worried about that one. But we'll come on to that a little bit later on. Liverpool,
they're getting.
I don't
results.
know where I sit with Liverpool.
They're getting results, though, aren't they?
That's it, and I think that's the thing that's annoying me. But I'm hoping that that's going to be one, because I mean, obviously against Wolves, I think it was at the weekend, they were looking ropey for the majority of the game from what I saw. Lucky not to be 2 or 3 down at the particular point that they started clawing it back. But I think the scoreline flattered them a little bit. But yeah, they're just kind of grinding results out at the moment. It's a little bit frustrating, but I suppose you could say the same thing for us as well. I mean, what about you? Who would you say is?
In fairness, Brighton surprised me, considering they lost a few players, didn't they? But they've kicked on. And another one, Brentford. I don't think they're doing too terrible. Obviously, they won 1, lost 1, drawn 3. But the fact that they lost their first team keeper, they lost their main striker. You think actually you take the main goal scorer and the first team keeper out of any team, and it's going to be a difficult season. But I don't think they're doing too bad, and I think they will kick on and do all right. I think the ones that are surprising for me are more the ones that have fallen down the table. I know I last season I predicted Newcastle might struggle a little bit this season, but they really are struggling. They're not playing particularly well in terms of what they were doing. They've brought in a number of players as well, which obviously takes a little time to gel. Manchester United, they did finish last season quite well, but again they just can't get it going. You can see the philosophy behind it, but I think the players are giving in a good effort, but I just don't think the quality is there. I think they're relying on a lot of older players now who 5 years ago you're going to win the Premier League. You've got Casemiro, Eriksen, Bruno Fernandes as a midfield 3. You're going to be up there. Mason Mount hasn't really been able to kick on, but I don't think that's necessarily all his fault. Obviously, Wan-Bissaka's out for a long time now, injury. They've brought in like Johnny Evans, and they're partnering him and Harry Maguire up. You think that most Premier League strikers these days will eat that up for dinner? Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
They're struggling, and Chelsea again. You can see the philosophy there. Same struggles as last year. Just can't put the ball in the back of the net. They can hit the post. They can have one be just on the line and not count as a goal. They can have one ruled out for offside, but they just can't get the results. But I think they will both be okay. It's just how long does it take to go. I think the one that really does surprise me, I would say, is Everton. Obviously, Sean Dyche came in halfway through the season, kept him up. You could see, obviously, you knew what he was going to get, but you could see that he was working with them, and it was a team void of confidence. And we thought, oh, okay, here we go. We're going to get a few good signings in, and they're going to kick on. And they really haven't. They're really struggling, and I don't know if he'll be able to turn it round. And that leads into sort of a little bit of what's going on with the sack race. But if I'm totally honest, the biggest surprise for me is West Ham. I was getting a little bit annoyed at some of our fans at the weekend saying this is the best time we could beat City, we can do this, we can do that. And I'm thinking, what world do you live on? We beat Brighton, we had 21% possession. Do you know what I mean? Bournemouth, we had 30% possession. Chelsea, we had a little bit of possession. Luton is our most possession. We had 60% possession against a team that everyone's keeping 70% of the ball. Do you know what I mean? And that frustrated me. But we're getting results. He's gone back to counter-attacking football. It's working. We've brought in a few good players, and if I'm honest, I think getting rid of Rice was the best thing for the team. You never like to lose your best players, but when you're sacrificing everything else to try and keep one man happy, it doesn't work, does it? As a football club.
No.
So I mean, yeah, I'm happy with what's going on. I don't like necessarily the style of it, but a win's a win. So all I can say at this point in time, I'll keep enjoying them while they're happening, just in case they stop. But yeah, I mean, that's what's gone on. I'm not shocked by the result of the weekend, as you said just a minute ago. We both predicted the same result. So it's one of those that it was sort of seen coming from a mile off. We get a quick goal on a counter attack, which is exactly what we did. And then we go and concede against a very good team. But yeah, I mean, the Arsenal game, again, full of controversy, I would say. Very confusing decisions being made that are in line with the letter of the law. If I'm honest, I think I've been saying it for a while, you've been saying it for a while, it's time we get rid of VAR. It's been, Mike Dean said pretty much, yeah, we don't want to dob our mates in it. It's getting more controversial each week. They're now coming out with silly rules that no one's heard of. And that should be it. There shouldn't be any more of it. I think leave it where it is. Say, yeah, thank you very much, goodbye. We've invested this money. We've had a good go. It's actually ruining the game. But then you've got to take it from the standpoint of who's making money off of it. Do you know what I mean? You've got to come out with that. But what was your thoughts on that Arsenal result? I mean, it was the right result, but it was a squeaky bum time for a fair bit of that game.
Well, yeah, I was talking to a couple of guys from work earlier, and it was one of those ones where you kind of happy with the winner. I even said this on our group yesterday that I'm happy with that result.
Yep.
I think it was a fair result. There were not necessarily points where I thought that we would lose the game, but I definitely thought that we would concede a stupid goal. And don't get me wrong, there were a couple of chances where potentially they could have scored, but I think for a team that are kind of devoid of any confidence as it stands at the moment, not scored many goals this season. As soon as I saw Dominic Calvert-Lewin come on, I've got to be honest, because let's be honest, if anyone's got to score against us, it's either going to be him or one of the centre backs. Yeah. Because the last few results have come from goals from their defensive positioning within the team, and it's caught us on one of these either lucky goals or it was going to be a worldie, so one of those. And yeah, when the Nketiah's goal was chalked off for offside, as soon as that happened, I'll be honest, I thought that was offside. Because it was just the way he was making the run back as soon as he received the ball, and I was like, yeah, but that's an offside. And I wasn't surprised that when it was kind of ruled out, but I know I was watching that Ref Watch earlier, and they were talking about the calibration of the technology and stuff. And I don't understand with the amount of money that is in the game, and I'll say this across all stadiums, not specifically just the Everton game, because I think we could have potentially been guilty of it a couple of weeks ago with the whole Manchester United offside thing.
Yep.
Why have they not got like some sort of runner with a camera going up and down the touchline?
Yeah.
Something so simple. Well, I say simple. You'd imagine it would be relatively simple. So you could have someone controlling that, making sure they're stuck to the last man, and that would clear up any sort of controversy in terms of offside decisions. You had to see clearly down the line. There's no kind of ambiguity because of it's at a funny angle. But I've got to say, for the angle of the decision on the Nketiah goal, I thought was an absolute shambles.
Yep.
And it, to me, looked like they were guessing where his leg was, where his body was.
And with that, they said that if it's that marginal, it's not going to be ruled as offside. I mean, the fact that the ruling was that because Beto didn't intentionally kick the ball to him, yes, he did. He intentionally got in the way of it, and yes, all right, he might have been running at speed, but that was his intent, was to block the pass or to stop the pass. So it was intentional. It can't be unintentional. He was just standing there and all of a sudden it hit him while he was waiting for a bus. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I can't get it. I mean, they did have a penalty shout, which I think on any other day they probably would have got. But yeah, it's a strange thing. I mean, I was watching that game thinking, one, I know we discussed Ramsdale maybe being a little bit under pressure and cracking a little bit, but I think Arteta made the right decision bringing Raya in. He's a solid, he's a solid shot stopper, but he also looked a lot calmer in some of the situations where Ramsdale's been flapping recently.
I would 100% agree with that, and I was speaking to my dad yesterday, and I couldn't believe how calm he looked, considering it was his debut. It was away, and it's a ground that we've not won at for the last 5 games. How calm and collected he seemed with the ball at his feet, the ball with his hands. For no reason am I saying that Ramsdale has been a bad keeper for us. There have been some silly decisions that he's made, and I think he would come out, and the majority of Arsenal fans will come out and say, yeah, there's a silly decision there, should have done better with those instances. And I'm not for 1 second saying he should be a permanent replacement, but I couldn't believe how calm I felt with him with the ball at his feet. There was just like an air of calm about him. I can't tell you what it was.
He's a little bit of an older keeper. I think he's 29, so he's a little bit more of an aged and experienced keeper than Ramsdale is, and maybe that's part of it. But I mean, he was one of the ones West Ham was linked with when we eventually signed Areola, and I was like, well, I like Raya. He's good. He was good at Brentford. He was good in the Championship. He's been good in his first season, and we just couldn't get it over the line. But I think that's a solid loan move. I think you got the option to buy as well, haven't you? Which I don't know what the end cost is, but I think if it's anything other than an astronomical price, it'd be silly not to sign him up.
I think it's about 27. I think it's 30 million in total.
Bargain. But
they've given us first refusal for 27. I think it's the £3 million loan deal to get the deal over the line.
Yeah.
With a 27.
Yeah,
option at the end of it.
I think you'd be silly not to take that up, but also what I did think, because you've obviously got a big game coming up this weekend in the North London derby. I thought you did a little bit what you did in some of those fixtures last year, where you were really good, relentless for the first 20 minutes, thinking here we go. And then all of a sudden it slowed right down and it got a little bit sloppy and it got a little bit and that's where you felt yourself opening up. And I thought that North London derby is going to be a big game. It's Postecoglou's first. They're relentless. They're going to be pressing high and fast, as they have been all season. And with Martinelli potentially injured for it, I was a little bit like, oh, I think you might crack under pressure a little bit here. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it could be an interesting result. And with that being said, is it worth moving on to some predictions for the predictions trophy, which you currently hold, but it is over my left shoulder? I will get it to you at some point.
That's fine.
But yeah, so give us a recap of what we predicted last week, and we can see if we can match it or better it this week.
Yep, absolutely. So there are 2 games, as you mentioned, West Ham versus Man City, and then Everton Arsenal. Both went for a 3-1 win to Manchester City. So, and the score was obviously 3-1. So it's 3 points each. So it's 3 points for a correct score.
Yep.
1 point for a correct result. In the Everton versus Arsenal game, you went for 1-0 to Everton with a cheeky little nick of a goal, and I went to 2-1 to Arsenal. The score was 1-0, so it's 0 points to you, 1 point to me. So the points for last week, Ian, you are on 3 points, I'm on 4, so that moves the season totals. I have regained my advantage. Ian, you're currently on 10 points and I'm on 11.
So it's all still to play for. But another big round of fixtures coming up this week, obviously with, as we said, the North London derby, and then West Ham travel to Liverpool. So could that be goals galore? Who knows? I'll let you say. Go on.
I was just going to say, where do you want to start?
I'll let you take first refusal on that on the North London derby, I reckon, because we've already touched on that a little bit.
Okay, so yeah, like I said towards the top of the show, this is a game I'm a little bit apprehensive about. Just because, obviously, Tottenham, they are flying high at the moment. I think many people would fairly say that they were going to struggle without Harry Kane. Where's the goals going to come from? But they are grinding results out. And at moments looking really, really good. It's... The reason why it's worrying me is this is potentially... this is going to be one of those games where if we were going to lose a game, this is the game that we were going to lose at the start of the season.
Yeah.
It's... I honestly don't know which way to go with it. Obviously, my heart is telling me that we are going to win this game. I wouldn't necessarily say it's going to be comfortable. I think it's going to very much depend on the squad selection. It wouldn't surprise me if we see a cool head coming in for Jorginho. So playing Declan Rice and Jorginho in the middle of the park, because you've got Thomas Partey still out injured.
Yep.
Then obviously you mentioned as well that Martinelli could potentially be out for a little while. He's felt something in his hamstring after he scored the goal that was given offside yesterday. And but Trossard looking good. He's made some, or he's been a massive impact sub for us. And even during pre-season, he looked on form. But for someone like Martinelli, I didn't actually realise this, but it's been like 9 games that he hasn't scored for.
Yep,
which
February,
I couldn't believe that when he said that yesterday. But yeah, Trossard, I think he's been absolutely brilliant for us. I was so happy that when we signed him, and yeah, I don't know where to go with this one. I'm gonna go with my heart in this one. I'm gonna go for a 2-1 to Arsenal on this one. I think.
I think Tottenham will concede. They have conceded a few goals this season, but they're starting to find their feet going forward. I can't decide whether I'm going to go 2-1 Tottenham or 3-2 Tottenham. I think it could be a high-scoring affair, or at least a few goals for each team. I'm going to go for a 2-1 to Tottenham, just because I think that relentlessness to start off with will go in your favour, and you'll nick an early one, but then I think they will slowly grow into the game. They will settle, and they will start doing what they've been doing this season, which is just grinding teams down. Yeah. So I'm going the reverse of what you said. I'm going for 2-1 to Tottenham.
If I'm being completely honest, I think it's going to be a draw. Just because I think both teams are going to be so cagey about this particular fixture, with given how the season, has started. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we did lose. I think it will be a draw, but I'm gonna predict with an Arsenal win.
Yeah, so we've both gone for a fair few goals. It's going to end up being a really boring 0-0, isn't it? Like, do you remember that episode of The Simpsons where they go and watch the football and it's just passing back and forth and no one actually moves? It's going to be one of them. But that moves us on to West Ham Liverpool. Again. Both teams, what we have to take into account, obviously, Arsenal back in the Champions League for the first time in a couple of seasons. Is that I'm correct in saying that?
Yeah, a few seasons. I think it's like 2017, 2018.
Yeah, so you've got that extra games coming in which will affect. And then obviously West Ham in the Europa League again, and we're travelling to the middle of nowhere or we might even be at home. I don't even know. We're playing like Bog Roll United, I think. I really don't know who we're playing. I've never heard of them. I mean, I don't know if that's because
really?
I'm uncultured. I don't know if that's because I'm uncultured in football, or whether the Europa League is just a little bit ropey these days. But we're travelling there, and then we travel up to Liverpool. And we've beat Liverpool over the last couple of seasons. We've given them a good game every time, but I think it's one of those we've really gone back to that counter-attacking football. And we're getting some results. Well, don't get me wrong, we're getting some results. But with games coming thick and fast, I think this one could be too much, especially when Liverpool are known for their relentless possession and domination. And I think, I mean, I mentioned this on a West Ham podcast the other day. Naya Fagurd come up and everyone was singing his praises, and my thing was get him on a bus and ship him out to somewhere else because I think he's a bit shit. And that's how Man City exploited us. Pretty much every goal was through him, chip it over the top because he's useless in the air. And then, so I think he's going to let us down a little bit if they start playing balls over the top and just going at him. He might be a bit lacking confidence. I think this could be quite a high scoring one. Again, we could catch them out because they do play a high line. I'm going to go 4-1 to Liverpool.
I'm going to give you a little bit more credit, to be honest. Like I said, they've conceded some silly goals this year, and I know they've been grinding some results out. And like I said earlier, I think the game against Wolves, I think the scoreline flattered them massively. Even the commentators come out and said how disappointing they were certainly in the first half. But I'm gonna go for 3-2 to Liverpool, and I think it's gonna be a really contentious decision that gives Liverpool the win.
So what you're saying is, we're going to score with every other pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, when we played Brighton and that scoreline flattered us, we went 1-0 up and we'd had 20 passes in 34 minutes. So it's one of those, we are sort of hitting and hoping a little bit, a bit of kick and hope. I mean, people are singing David Moyes' praises again, but they didn't like it when Big Sam did it. So, I mean, it's a little bit strange. But, if we can get a draw out of this, then I'll be happy. But I think every West Ham fan knows we're going to sit 11 men behind the ball and kick it and hope. Do you know what I mean? My advice would be go down the left, run at Trent Alexander-Arnold, chip it over the top of him, because one or two things is going to happen. He's going to fluff it and miss the ball and not kick it, or he's going to trip you up and you can get him sent off, and just keep relentlessly attacking him out of everybody. But what do I know about football? Let us know what you think the results for those games are going to be in the comment section over on YouTube. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe, because why not? And now, for the bit that you're all been waiting for, the sack race. Not sports day when you're getting in a potato sack and running down or jumping down the 100 metres. No, this is which Premier League manager is going to go first. And when I looked up the odds earlier, I was a little bit surprised at one of the entrants, but then again, maybe not. So coming in at number 1, who all the bookies think is going to leave first, is Paul Heckingbottom of Sheffield United. Now, before I look this up, I was reading earlier, they're looking at trying to tap up Chris Wilder to get him to come back to Sheffield United. Obviously, he got them promoted last time. He kept them in the Premier League, didn't he, for a year, and then they sacked him. I think they could be. I like him. He's not really kicked on and done anything of note, I don't think, since he left them last time. But would he go back? They've sold some of the good players that he brought in and managed to convince to come in. Would he go back to them after being sacked for doing such a good job last time? Well, I mean, what's your opinion on that?
Do you know what? I don't actually know.
I think the question is although it's a Premier League club, as Sheffield United, who do you attract? You've got to know, obviously, if you're going to sack a manager, you can't go, right, we're going to be obscure for 6 weeks and having a caretaker. Do you know what I mean? You've got to know who you want to bring in.
It's a difficult one because obviously I think they were fairly average when they were in the Premier League the last time.
Yep.
They kind of romped the Championship a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think they finished second last year, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
So fairly comfortable within the division. But I think they're going to be a bit of a yo-yo club. So if they were to sack him, I don't know who would want to come in.
Yeah.
Because effectively you're going to have a potential relegation on your CV again. And I think there's this culture at the moment where managers aren't given enough time to kind of correct. Granted, I think Everton is the exception to the rule here, as were Southampton a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah.
Because they were kind of languishing right near the bottom. And I think we're quite fortunate on a couple of occasions to stay up when they potentially could have gone down. And you've got the risk of selling your best players and not replacing them. Mm-hmm. Is that going to damage your squad? More than likely. So it's frustrating when you don't give the manager the opportunity to, especially when seeing how comfortable they were in the lower divisions. I think this is going to have to be one of these ones where you kind of give them the opportunity to kind of ride the storm out and maybe just accept that you're going to be kind of flitting between the two divisions. Because I think it would be fair to say not too good for the Championship, but you excel in the Championship.
It's
but not quite at the standard.
Yeah, it's a bit like that Norwich, isn't it?
Exactly.
You're a good competitive Championship club, but you've not got the funds or the resources to stay and maintain in the Premier League.
Yeah.
I think what Sheffield are reminiscing on is the last time they were in the Premier League. That first season, they did do really well. Mm-hmm. And I think trying to emulate that is always a dangerous game because it's not the same league, it's not the same players, things have evolved, managers have changed, blah, 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 blah. But yes, Paul Heckingbottom comes in at number 1. At number 2, for favourite, is, speaking of Everton, is Mr. Sean Dyche himself. Now, Everton are, as we said, not doing well. You can see there is a philosophy there. They've brought in a couple of players, but not as many as we thought. He wasn't really backed because there was that question mark, is it going to be sold? And I think that question mark still languishes over with a transfer of ownership potentially imminent from what we've all been reading. That always brings in the question mark of, are they going to want to bring in their own man? Doesn't matter if he's doing a good job, a bad job, or an indifferent job. New owners can mean change. I think they would be silly to sack him. I think if they back him, he will do well. I think he will keep them up this year. Especially, I think if they do get taken over, I think that Everton is one of those teams that could end up having money thrown at them a little bit this year, like in January. But yeah, he's number 2. What do you make of that?
To be honest, I don't think it's unwarranted. But again, I completely agree with what you're saying, and potentially with I think it's another American consortium.
It
If
is,
I
yeah,
remember
they
correctly.
own a few. They've bought Seville, sitting bottom of the Liga. They've bought Hoffenheim or Hertha Berlin, I think it is, and they've got a few clubs, but none of them seem to be run particularly well at the minute.
But you could end up where I'm going with this is you could end up with a similar sort of situation to Newcastle, where they do get. I wouldn't necessarily say that they've gone out massively spending to the degree of the fact that money's no object for the owners, etc. What I mean by that is they did invest quite well within the first couple of transfer windows.
Yeah.
And Everton's a massive club.
New stadium coming next year.
Sorry?
New stadium next year.
So I think it would be a shame. It would be a shame to see them get rid of Sean Dyche again, just because he's quite solid. But just like with the Chelsea issue, obviously they gave Graham Potter a chance, and then at just the right time they could get rid of the manager and get in who they wanted.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if it's a similar sort of scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But again, you've got to then be able to find someone. I think they were quite fortunate with the likes of Ancelotti as a manager, with someone with his pedigree.
That was a phenomenal appointment. I don't know how they pulled it off, but
exactly. But I don't know who would come in or who would want to come in
to the club at the moment
in its current state.
Yeah.
And B, not knowing what the new owners are going to be like as and when that takeover does go through.
Yeah. And say all those question marks make Sean Dyche's job even harder as well, because actually all the players are going to be thinking the same. Am I going to be here? Am I going to have to move this and the other? It takes the focus away from let's play football. And number 3 on the list was one that really shocked me. Rob Edwards of Luton. I think this is just a case because Luton are going to get smashed every week. I think if the owners of Luton I think they're fairly sensible. Obviously, they're the first team to be relegated to non-league and come back to the top division in English football ever, and they've done it in 9 years. Obviously, they had what's his face who took over at Southampton, who left and come back and left and come back. I think to get rid of Rob Edwards, he's got a good feeling around the club. Some of the football they're playing is not terrible, but I think he really overachieved and got them into the Premier League, which I think is beyond any of their wildest dreams. And I think you have to stick with him. I can't see there's any reason that you could get rid of him and keep the fan base happy with a man that's essentially given you a dream. And I know, obviously, as a Luton fan, you would be going, we're in the Premier League, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to stay there, we're going to get back into Europe, I think that's a long way off where they actually are at. And I think it would be a real shame if they did get rid of him, and I think it would be a stupid move, but what do I know? But what's your opinion on that one? Because that was a bit of a shock one for me, him being in there.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those ones with the run of results, obviously, for anyone that's had 4 or 5 games with 4 or 5 defeats. It's going to be pretty obvious they are in there. Funny enough, I was actually talking about this earlier with a guy from work, massive Luton fan, and apparently you could see with the manager Saturday or Sunday come out basically not so much, apologising to the fans, but getting quite emotional about the fact that he's not been able to deliver any sort of result. I think they've been a little bit unfortunate with some of their games, and it's not like that they are completely out of their depth. Do you know what I mean?
Well, they should have got a point against us, shouldn't they? Definitely.
Exactly, and also Chelsea, I think, was the abnormality. Obviously, lost against Fulham at the weekend, and I think we as football fans were under no illusion that Luton were going to struggle this year.
Yep.
With the size of the stadium and the amount of investment that they've got available to them, it was always going to be difficult. And I wouldn't necessarily say that they well, no, they are the whipping boys of the Premier League potentially, but I think they have come into the Premier League prematurely.
Oh yeah,
someone was talking about. Sorry, I think my friend was talking about them building a new stadium. They've obviously had to adapt their stadium that they've got currently to allow for access to the Premier League. But yeah, as much as they could go through the whole season losing, not get any points on the board, I think they would be stupid to get rid of their manager.
I think they will get I know exactly, and I say I agree 100% what you're saying. I think they will get some results because they're not being blown away, are they? As you'd expect, they are being competitive for large patches of matches. It's just a case of getting those first Premier League goals, takes off that pressure, and I don't think they, by any stretch of imagination, are going to stay up. But I don't think they're going to finish sort of pointless with 38 losses. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And last but not least, this is as far we're going to go in this list. Obviously, these odds are changing all the time. This is from when I made the thumbnail 3 hours ago. This is what the number 4th one was. Erik ten Hag. Which if there's Rob Edwards, I was a bit like I was shocked but understood because obviously it's a results-driven business. Erik ten Hag, I thought you've brought in a man with a philosophy and asked him to change your club, and it's gonna take a while because you've been shit for a long time. He's been backed and then not backed and then backed and then the club's being sold and then it's not and then it. How am I trying to say this? Manchester United have been through a summer of turmoil where no one knows what's going on, and you expect then him to be able to deliver Manchester City style dominance on the pitch, and that's not ever going to happen. You've never when I say about that is when you look at Manchester City as a club. When do you hear about a dodgy story coming out? You don't. When do you hear about
other than the 146 charges?
Well, but that's not on the pitch, is that? That's, do you know what I mean? That's behind closed doors, a secret investigation that went on to find that. You don't ever hear about, there's this turmoil behind the scenes, there's this, there's that. We're going to sell 10% of our club. Whenever you see a Manchester City signing, you never see the rumour beforehand. Whenever the rumour comes out, the next day they're announced. Do you know what I mean? It's not like when you get Arsenal, you go, we've been linked with this player and that player and this player, and this player's been seen at Heathrow, and it's one of those that it's a different run club where Manchester United, I think, are a bit of a laughing stock at the moment. They are historically a big club. I wouldn't say they are a big club currently. They have a huge fan base, but I mean, last season we had a good conversation about if you are a big club or you've got a following. But I think with all the turmoil going on with that, and with the fact that a few of their key players are injured and they've got quite an ageing squad, and actually Old Trafford needs a complete revamp because it's falling apart, and when it rains all the fans get wet because the roof leaks. I don't know how they expect him to deliver results. And as I alluded to earlier, the players are putting in the effort. I just don't think they're good enough. Because when you think of Manchester United, you think of that Alex Ferguson dominance, don't you? You still do think of that. And to match that, to match one of the best managers to ever have graced the game, and to match some of the players that they had in that team, you put them on paper, how many of them walk into sort of that prime Ferguson team? One,
not
maybe.
Many.
Do you know what I mean? And it's. I feel sorry for the guy because he's expected to deliver a win every week, but that's well beyond what his expectation should be.
I agree with you. They are a massive laughing stock, and to be honest, I can almost. You could, in fact, I did predict that they would lose against Brighton. Obviously, doing my soccer six, and I can put screenshots if people think I'm just saying it. I genuinely thought that they would lose against Brighton at the weekend. But the difference to the position that Ten Hag has got, and I'm going to use Arteta as the comparison, because there were a lot of comparisons that were made between the two managers when Ten Hag first come in, and I think Arteta was 2.5 years into the progression at that particular point.
Yep.
And Manchester United, they did see a bounce very quickly under Ten Hag, as some teams do under a new manager. And you could kind of see that identity kind of developing under Manchester United. I know they had the whole Ronaldo saga going on and all sorts of different bits and pieces, but I think they have recruited, dare I say it, poorly over the last couple of years. I don't think, or there's a few players within that squad that should have moved on by now. And I think that they are suffering for that. Obviously, you've got Maguire in the team at the moment, who's completely devoid of all confidence, and you're expecting him to kind of fill in at the back. That's not going to work. There's obviously a few other players. I think Anthony, you could see, I was watching it on Match of the Day when they played us, and you could see him out on the wings, kind of screaming for the ball, not getting any service, throwing his arms up in the air. I would actually disagree with your comment to say that they are playing well. I think certainly
they're playing with a philosophy.
There were, with the philosophy. I agree with the philosophy. But I don't think they have the quality in order to back that up. I think they've got some big name players. But I would disagree to say that there's much evidence to say that they are buying into the philosophy.
I think they're putting in the effort. I just don't think they have the quality to pull it off. They're running. They're running about.
I agree.
Yeah, they're running about. I mean, Anthony's one that he's got a controversial thing coming out, as we're saying about City and how that's run as a club. Anthony's been pulled out of the Brazil squad. He was dropped at the weekend because of it. Like some allegations that have come out. It's not good. I mean, when you look at United's fixtures, though, I've just had a look at their fixtures. Obviously, they started playing Wolves, which you think, yeah, okay, it's a win. Then they played Tottenham. And as Tottenham have shown this season, they're not laying down no more. They're not sitting back. I think that's quite a difficult game. They then went, had a visit from Forest, which they won 3-2, but they won. They got a result. Then they played you guys in a game that had some controversial decisions, but again, a very different. I would say back to a difficult fixture. And then they've played Brighton, which, barring us, Brighton have been dominating teams again this season. Well, they dominated us. They just didn't get the result. So I don't think they've had the easiest run of fixtures necessarily either, which probably hasn't helped his case. But yeah, he's number 4. Speaking of Manchester United, and because we've had a bit of discussion about them, do you want... They're playing Bayern Munich, right? That's their next game. But then they play Burnley. Do you want to predict the Manchester United-Burnley game?
Yes.
Because obviously Vincent Kompany knows all about Manchester United and the derby. I mean, he slipped over for Wayne Rooney to score that overhead kick, didn't he? But yeah, that's the next game for Manchester United, away to Burnley. Burnley are currently drawing, I think, to Nottingham Forest. Yes, it is 1-1. Callum Hudson-Odoi. Chelsea could have had him. He could have scored for them. Didn't want him. Here's the silly thing. He's gone to Nottingham Forest for like £2 million. It was like a season ago that Bayern Munich were trying to buy him for like £90 million. They were like, no, he's too good. We're not going to sell him. And then like £2 million go to Nottingham. How disappointed would you be as a player? But yeah, go on. Burnley, Manchester United. What's your take on that one?
I would love to see another United defeat. Sorry, I keep fucking knocking my microphone tonight. I do apologise.
I'll join in.
Apologise for anyone wearing headphones. I I would love to see another United defeat. Obviously, you mentioned as well about Vincent Company. Do you know what? I'm going to go for a Burnley win on this one. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Burnley on this one.
Oh, interesting. I'm just looking at the results. Obviously, Burnley are scoring goals. Or they have the last couple of games. They scored one against Villa. They scored one against Forest. They scored 2 against Tottenham. Scored again tonight. So I do think they will get on the score sheet. I'm gonna go a different way with that. I'm gonna go the reverse fixture of Manchester United's last 2. They've lost 3-1 the last couple of games. I'm gonna go for a 3-1 Manchester United.
Okay. There you go. Some bonus points up for grabs.
But yeah, so just fleeting back to that. Obviously, you said 2-1 Burnley. I've gone 3-1 Manchester United. So again, another fixture for you to get your chops into. But yeah, you just want to bring up the fact of recruitment, because I think you've brought up a very good point there, that they've not recruited particularly well. They've spent money. There's no doubt about that. But I think their recruitments are stopgap, aren't they? They've brought in Casemiro, who, all right, you go, yeah, he's a good player. He's won everything. But he's past his best. He's been brought in to shore up that defensive midfield for a season. And then you think, oh, this season they're going to get someone who's a bit more with it to have a season being mentored and share that burden and then take over. They've not done that at all. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there.
Who was the striker that they had last year? I can't even remember his bloody name.
Wout Weghorst.
Who
is actually a Burnley player. I think Burnley sold him, if I'm correct. I think they sold him this season. But they have brought in Rasmus Højlund, who people have compared to Haaland, but he's not being as prolific. He's a big, strong, sort of Scandinavian player. He's got a name that's similar. Do you know what I mean? I do think he will be good, but he's a very raw talent. He's was a goal that was ruled off at the weekend when Marcus Rashford dribbled it off by about 400 foot and went, oh, I don't know what the problem was. This is like it's jumpers for goalpost rules. That weren't out. But
just to go back on something you mentioned. We were talking about the discussion. If you haven't already, go and check out one of the podcasts we did last year. I think it was called Big or Prestigious.
That's it.
Was the discussions that we had. Sorry, I wasn't trying to be rude.
No.
I was genuinely looking for that. So if it looked like I wasn't paying attention, it's because I was trying to find that, because I thought you made a really good point there. In that, if you do watch that video, obviously we would talk about the what you would say was the big 6 currently, and looking at the prestigious clubs. We did go through quite a few there. Again, if you disagree or agree with anything that we've said, leave your comments in the comment section, and we will get back to you.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so I mean, Manchester United, laughing stock of the world. I can't think of anything else footballing wise that's gone on, apart from England are not going to be on Channel 4 no more. They've lost the rights to it. I was reading today. I don't know who's taking over, but hopefully that means Dion Dublin will go back to The Price is Right, or whatever he presents. Homes Under the Hammer. Can't stand. As a guy, he loves the sound of his own voice more than me.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really care where it is. I'm not going to watch it unless it's an actual tournament.
As long as it don't take over something that I do watch on the occasion. But
nothing else. Nothing else.
So until next week, I've been Ian.
I've been Mike.
Make sure you are subscribed from wherever you're watching. Let us know, and we'll see you next week.